If you give me your email address and it's legible, let me say that one more time. If it's legible, I'll let you know the next time I come to California. And friends, I've done about 5,000 school assemblies in 48 states. I've sung for 1.5 million children in my short time. And I have brochures about the work I do in school. If you want to help me out, you pick up my brochure and you place it firmly in the hand of a school principal or somebody on the PTA. When I come back to California, they'll invite me to school to sing these old songs and get the children singing, talking about the oral tradition, how these songs are passed on from one person's mouth to another person's ear, and probably teach them at least one of the songs that Woody Guthrie wrote. I also want you to know that I have CDs here on this table. I have 7 different CDs with me for sale. But I take it back, it's up to 8 now. My goodness, I'm making them faster than I can even count them. I have 8 different CDs. My new CD of American folk songs, The Radio's Taking Our Songs Away. The Irrepressible American Folk Song in the Age of the Selfie. Take it home with you and sing along, 72 minutes of listening pleasure. I have a new CD called It Might As Well Be a Myth, which is my CD of storytelling songs, because I've been doing this program for 20 years, and after the show people come up and say, "You just told this great story about Woody Guthrie, which CD is it on?" Well, I'm happy to report, I finally listened to you. I made a CD and I put this next story on that CD, 72 minutes of storytelling, It Might As Well Be a Myth. Take it home and enjoy it with your family. You know, my bestseller is Along Came a Giant, my kids' CD. If you want to do something really radical, give it to the grandchildren or the great-grandchildren in your family. They will have to listen to it 500 times before they learn all those nonsense choruses. And every hour they spend listening to it, their parents will get an hour of quiet to pay the bills, or wash the dishes, or take a nap, because grown-ups need time-outs too. And friends, I want you to know, if you're watching somebody sing these old American folk songs in the 21st century, I invite you to look to your right and left and observe you are not in a coffee house, you're not in a club, you're not in a theater. You're meeting the meeting room of your own local public library, and I want you to get used to it, because this is where vaudeville went. If you want to see the cultural arts programs in this century, they're presented here in this room in the library. In July, every Sunday, there will be a free jazz concert, and this program and those programs are sponsored by one of the most radical and subversive groups in the United States of America. I am, of course, speaking about the dreaded Friends of the Library. When the library says, you know, we're just not going to pay for that, the Friends of the Library say, oh, yes, we are. When you visit their book sales and see them selling books for $1 or $2 a piece, I want you to stop and think, how many of those books would they have to sell to fund a single cultural arts program of this kind? The answer is quite a few. If you are not a member of your Friends of the Library, get one of the brochures as you leave the building here. For $20, you can join the Friends of the Library, and they'll even give you a coupon to spend that $20 in the Friends of the Library book sale. If you are retired, you have time, volunteer for your Friends of the Library. And if you only learn one thing from my sermon today, I want you to learn this. Libraries will get you through times of no money a whole lot better than money is going to get you through times of no library. Will you indulge me? Can I tell you one more story before we go? And then I'll let you enjoy this absolutely gorgeous summer afternoon that you folks get here in California. I drove down from Oregon yesterday. It was 110 degrees in Medford. 113 in Redding. I spent the night in Williams, where it was a merciful 103. Woody Guthrie. Woody was born July 14th of 1912 in Okemah, Oklahoma. 12 days after his namesake, the governor of New Jersey, Woodrow Wilson, was nominated for the presidency on the Democratic ticket. Now, Woodrow Wilson, if you go to the library and read a biography about his life, you will learn, as I did, that Woodrow Wilson was a Southern Democrat. He was a great believer in segregation. In his own words, he said that segregation is healthy for the community because it diminishes friction between the races. Woodrow Wilson's favorite movie was a movie by D.W. Griffith called Birth of a Nation, based on a book called The Klansman. And during Woodrow Wilson's term, the KKK had its biggest revival since Reconstruction. Washington, D.C. had always been a segregated town except for the federal government agencies. Since General Grant became president in the 1870s, black people and white people worked elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder in federal government agencies until Woodrow Wilson became president and he segregated the federal government. Well, Woody was named for this man. Woodrow Wilson campaigned for a second term in 1916 on a campaign that said, if you vote for me, you vote for peace. If you vote for the other guy, you vote for war. Go to the library and read about his life. Nothing could be further from the truth. There was a war brewing over in Europe between the English and the French and the Germans, and it started in 1914. And the Americans stayed out of it because so many people in America were isolationists. Do you even use that word anymore? You know what an isolationist is? An isolationist is somebody who believes that American troops shouldn't participate in the war until the troops are landing on the beach at San Francisco here in North America. It is very different than the way we do things in the 21st century, but I want you to know that when Woodrow Wilson was president, half the people in this country were isolationists. But this war was brewing in Europe, and Germany was fighting with the English and the French. It looked like America was going to get involved in that war. The American bankers did what they always did. They invested heavily in all sides of the war because they don't care who wins as long as they make interest. But in April of 1917, they went to President Wilson and said, it doesn't look good. If Germany wins this war, we may not get our investment back. So guess what? On April 6th of 1917, 100 years ago, Congress decided America was going to come to the aid of France and England and fight Germany in the First World War, and tens of thousands of veterans came home from that war, missing eyes and noses, legs and arms, and even faces. And their presence was a painful reminder to relatives and friends of the unspeakable costs of foreign wars. Only propagating more isolationists in America. Between the First World War and the Second World War, half the people in America were isolationists. Woody Guthrie was among them. In the fall of 1937, he got a job in Los Angeles, California, at a little 1,000-watt radio station called KFBD, where they paid him $1 a day to sing his Dust Bowl ballads and talk his anti-war isolationist talk. Then, on Labor Day weekend of 1939, Hitler's army invaded Poland. England declared war on Germany for the second time in the century, and World War II was a done deal. Well, in the United States, you can say whatever you want about the war before the war is declared, but once that war starts, you better be careful what you say. Woody Guthrie was decidedly on the wrong side of the fence. So in November, the station manager finally decided to fire him. See, Woody thought that the job of a folk singer was to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable, but the station manager thought otherwise. And Woody got fired for his left-wing politics. Woody used to say, left wing, chicken wing, it's all the same to me. So now he was in Los Angeles without a jacket, a suitcase, or a guitar, and winter was coming on in 1939, but in his pocket, Woody had a letter from his buddy Will Geer. Anybody here remember the actor Will Geer? When I was a kid in high school, we used to watch a TV show called The Waltons, where Will Geer played Grandpa Walton. And it was one of the few jobs you could get in Hollywood because Will Geer had been blacklisted in the 50s. Blacklisted for allegedly being one of the fellow travelers of that dreaded Communist Party, like Woody Guthrie. Although Woody Guthrie did write for the Communist Party newsletter, he was never a member because Woody was so unpredictable and disorganized, nobody in their right mind would have invited him to join. Well, Will Geer wrote to Woody and he said, Woody, if you can't get any work in LA, come to New York City. If we can't get you any singing work here, I'll make them hire you on the stage crew because I'm the star of the show. You see, things were a little different for Will Geer back then. In 1939, Will was one of the highest paid actors in New York City, playing the part of Jeter Lester in a brand new hit play called Tobacco Road. So he said, Woody, if you can't get singing work, I'll make them hire you on the stage crew. So without a jacket, a suitcase, or a guitar, Woody folded up that letter, turned his face to the east in Los Angeles, and started heading east on Highway 66, and every time Woody stopped for a cigarette or a cup of coffee or a sandwich, You heard a song on the jukebox in the radio station that had been written by a man from Russia. A man who came to this country with his impoverished rabbi father and Jewish family and lived on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in squalor till 1911 when he got a job as a singing waiter, and then in 1917 he published a piece of sheet music that sold over 1 million copies in its first 3 months of publication. In 1917 he got drafted into the United States Army as a private and was stationed in Yaphank, New York. And there he wrote an all-soldier musical review called Yip Yip Yaphank, and for that show he wrote a song about the United States. But it was such a patriotic, flag-waving song, he didn't think anybody was going to like it in 1918, when all the popular songs talked about going over there and killing the Hun. So he put it in his grape juice file. Now, do we have songwriters here today? You know about the grape juice file? When you write a new song, it goes in the grape juice file. And you check back in 20 or 30 years to see if it turns to crappy vinegar or good wine. Only time will tell. 20 years later, a singer by the name of Kate Smith said, "Mr. Berlin, in your trunk, in your grape juice file, do you have any patriotic songs?" And she recorded this song, and when Woody traveled east in 1939, every time he stopped for a cup of coffee or a sandwich, this was the song they played on the jukebox or the radio. It went like this, it went, "God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above." Well, it's a great song, and that's why you all still sing it today. You may not know this, but God Bless America has earned over $700,000 in royalties for the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of America since 1938, when Irving Berlin, the composer, assigned the copyright to those two youth groups. But guess what? When this song was new and Woody heard it on the radio, he hated this song. He hated this song because he was broke and hitchhiking, and Irving Berlin was a millionaire. Irving Berlin was one of the most popular songwriters in America. He owned the Music Box Theater on Broadway. And when Irving Berlin wrote songs for those Hollywood movies, he negotiated to keep the copyright on those songs, something very few songwriters could manage in all of American history. But Woody had another reason to hate this song. You see, Woody had traveled all across the country during the Depression, when 1 out of 4 people couldn't get a job. Woody had seen those mothers and fathers waiting on long lines for free bowls of soup or a loaf of bread, and he wanted to know how a man with millions of dollars like Irving Berlin could be so insensitive as to write a song called God Bless America when nobody could get a job, and everybody was wishing it was just a little bit more blessed. So he said, when I get to New York City, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write another song that says all the things God Bless America doesn't say. In Pittsburgh, Woody got stuck in a snowstorm. To warm himself, he went into a diner and ordered a hot cup of coffee. And he nursed it as slowly as he could to warm his icy fingers on that hot cup of coffee. And as he sat there at that counter caressing that cup of coffee, he heard an announcer on the radio say that God Bless America was going to replace the Star-Spangled Banner as the national anthem. This may sound heretical to this audience today, but I remind you that God Bless America, the Star-Spangled Banner didn't become our national anthem until 1931 during the Hoover administration. It's a 1.5 octave song that almost nobody can get through, and it would have been a good idea to get a new national anthem. Woody said to himself, when I get to New York, I'm going to write a different song that says the things I really feel about this country. So Woody tried to hitchhike out of Harrisburg, but that blizzard was so bad, most of the bridges and highways were closed because of ice and snow. It was a passing forest ranger in a pickup truck who saw Woody Guthrie laying in a pile of snow, freezing to death. And that ranger compassionately picked up Woody Guthrie and piled him in the back of that pickup truck and drove him to his own parents' house, where that ranger's parents filled Woody's belly with hot bowls of buttered clam chowder. And they bought him a $3 bus ticket to New York City. So without a jacket, a suitcase, or guitar, Woody arrived in Manhattan on February 16th of 1940. And with Will Geer's letter in his pocket, he tried to go through those slushy, snowy streets to find where Will lived. Finally, at sunset, he made it to Will Geer's house at 59th Street and 5th Avenue, a palatial apartment that was torn down years ago. Today, it's an Apple store. Woody knocked at the door and met Will Geer, who was a foot taller than Woody. And Woody said, "My goodness, this place is palatial. What do you guys pay for rent?" And Will Geer told him, $250. And Woody said, A year? Will Gear said, a month. Woody stayed with the Gears for a week. He ate all their food, drank all their wine, smoked all their cigarettes, and he slept on their couch. And he borrowed a pre-World War II Brazilian rosewood guitar from Will's wife, Herta Gear, that Herta's mother had given her as a gift. And Will took Woody out on a few auditions down there, playing gigs for Woody, and Woody brought Herta's guitar with him. And years later, what Will remembered is that somehow, for reasons he didn't understand, Woody couldn't keep his hands from shaking. Woody earned enough money playing at those Bowery clubs to move on. He took Herta's guitar out of his case when he went to do those gigs and brought it out into the blizzard, and Herta declared that Woody Guthrie never returned that guitar. He made enough money at the Bowery to move on, and he walked 18 blocks through Manhattan to the corner of 43rd Street and 6th Avenue, and he decided to check into a little rooming house that doesn't exist anymore there called Hanover House. And there on the second floor at a wooden desk with a yellow pencil like the children use in the classrooms, and a piece of that lined notebook paper with the 3 holes punched in it, Woody finally sat down to write that song about the United States he promised to write. He made the first verse a chorus. He borrowed the tune from an old song the Carter family recorded in Memphis, Tennessee, back in 1930. And he put that song in his own grape juice file, because if you're going to write 1,000 songs in 12 years, you got to try to knock one off every morning before breakfast. Woody Guthrie wrote compulsively, almost obsessively, on scraps of paper, empty cigarette packages, paper towels out of the washroom, toilet paper and napkins. Somehow he seemed to understand that he didn't have a whole lot of time. 12 years later, Woody was living on Mermaid Avenue in Coney Island with his wife Marjorie and their 3 children, Arlo, Jody, and Nora. Woody was in a bad way. All of his friends could see it. He was so despondent and belligerent, especially if he had been drinking, that Marjorie didn't know what to do. Sometimes he was so despairing, he was even suicidal. And one night, he got so upset in May of 1952, he got violent, and Marjorie had called the police. But she was convinced that his problem was more than alcoholism. So finally, at his wife's urging, in June of 1952, Woody checked himself into Bellevue Hospital in New York City. And he was there for a month of tests, and they could not figure out what was wrong with him. So on July 22nd of 1952, Woody Guthrie entered Brooklyn State Hospital. He was there for 6 weeks, test after test after test, till finally a young doctor was reviewing his chart, and he noticed that Woody's mother had been institutionalized with some unknown disease, and it finally dawned on him. He said, "Why hasn't this patient been checked for Huntington's disease?" They did the blood test, and after a lifetime of speculation, Woody understood what put his mother Nora in a sane asylum in Norman, Oklahoma many years before. A hereditary brain disorder called Huntington's disease, and there was no cure. Well, Woody spent a few more months there at Brooklyn State Hospital. As a voluntary patient, he could check himself in and check himself out. Finally fed up in 1954, he checked himself out for one last trip to California. It didn't go well. He made his way back, and in September of 1954, he voluntarily checked himself back into Brooklyn State Hospital. And he was there till 1956, till May, when an unshaven and scruffy Woody Guthrie checked himself out for the last time. He wandered through the streets of Manhattan, trying to remember how to get to the home of his pal, Harold Leventhal, the man who managed the folk quartet, the Weavers. It was a Saturday night, and Harold and his wife, Natalie, were out at dinner. When they came home, they found a homeless person crouched in front of their door. When they turned on the porch light, much to their surprise, it was their old friend, Woody Guthrie, looking pretty scruffy. They invited Woody in, and he sat on their white couch, and he tried to light a cigarette, but his hand shook so badly, he dropped the lit cigarette, burning a hole in the fabric. He told Harold he was broke, so Harold gave Woody a $20 bill and sent him out into the night. Woody wandered along the turnpikes, till finally, He was arrested by the police for trespassing, the local definition of what you do with somebody who's wandering aimlessly in a dazed condition on a highway. So Woody spent the night in the Morris County Jail, and the next morning he was examined by a doctor. Nelson Mintz decided that Woody Guthrie needed to be institutionalized for the safety of the patient and the welfare of others. And Judge Nelson K. Mintz decided that Woody needed to be put in the Greystone Hospital, New Jersey State Hospital in Greystone Park. Woody was assigned there. When he got to the hospital, he said to the doctors, what I have is called Huntington's disease. It's the same thing my mother had. This is exactly how she walked. This is how she talked. It's the same problem, but they didn't believe him. They classified him as paranoid type schizophrenic, and it was 6 months before they took Woody at his word and changed his diagnosis to Huntington's disease. Well, Harold Loventhal came over to Greystone and decided to see how Woody was doing, check in with him. And Woody's doctor looked through the file and kind of chuckled to himself. He said, your friend Woody Guthrie is a sick man. He's delusional. He says he wrote over 1,000 songs. Woody spent 4 years, 10 months, and 5 days at the New Jersey State Hospital at Greystone. He was patient number 65935 in Ward 40, which Woody liked to call Wardy 40. And he was there till April of 1961, when he shuffled out of the hospital because some doctor, overly optimistic, had written the word improved on his chart. But he was wrong, because within a year, Woody couldn't get around without a wheelchair. Woody spent the last 5 years of his life laying in a hospital bed in Brooklyn, fighting that disease with all his might, slowly losing control of each muscle in his body. His wife Marjorie had divorced him, but she told her new husband Al that I'm going to be spending my days taking care of Woody and my nights raising money for Huntington's disease. She used to say, Woody, would you like a sip of water through a straw? And old Woody Guthrie would blink his eyes twice for yes and once for no, as they were the last muscles he could still control in his face. As he lay there in that bed fighting that disease with all his remaining life force, that little song he'd written back in 1940 at Hanover House, well, it went around the world without ever being on the radio or the television or the hit parade or the top 40. Somehow it has become one of the handful of best-known English language folk songs on the planet. That means whatever country your ancestors came from, whatever language they spoke at home, if they knew one song in English that wasn't Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Old MacDonald Had a Farm, or Happy Birthday to You, they knew the one that Woody Guthrie wrote in February of 1940 at Hanover House, the corner of 43rd Street and 6th Avenue, just one long block from that old New York Public Library. One like this. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Now, friends, I want you to know, I've done thousands of school assemblies for 1.5 million kids. And I sung this song with every one of them, and I didn't have to teach them the song. See, they already knew this song because some teacher on their campus had made it their business to pass this song on to the kids. But they usually only teach them one of those benign verses Woody wrote about the landscapes of the United States and the chorus. When Woody wrote this song, it was decidedly not a children's folk song. He wrote some verses at Hanover House that self-respecting kindergarten teachers won't touch with an 11-foot pole. But you should hear them. And they went like this. Remember Irving Berlin's song, God Bless America? On a bright sunny morning, in the shadow of the steeple, by the welfare office, I saw my people. As they stood there hungry, I stood there wondering if God blessed America for me. You might think Woody was being sacrilegious. He came from a church-going family. He just wanted to know how a man with millions of dollars could be so insensitive as to write a song called God Bless America when nobody could get a job. He wrote one more verse in Hanover House that gives you some insight into his personal politics. And that verse went like this. There was a big high wall there that tried to stop me, and a great big sign there said private property. But on the other side, you know, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. You ever think about where Woody got his tune? Go into the library and look for the CDs that have the original recordings of the Carter family from Hiltons, Virginia. In May of 1930, at a session in Memphis, Tennessee for Ralph Peer, they recorded an old Christian hymn. I wonder if anybody sings it. Went like this. Oh, my darling brother, when the world's on fire, do you want God's bosom to be your pillow? Won't you tide me over in the rock of ages? Oh, rock of ages, cleft for me. We don't sing those words anymore, do we? We sing Woody's words. Think we could sing them together before we go? This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was me. Let's sing it with everybody singing. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was